Hey, welcome back everybody. This week, as you can see, that is not my Jeep. That's the Land Rover. This is a 2003 Land Rover Discovery 2, and I'm going to show you how to install an oil pressure gauge into your Land Rover. It's super easy. So I currently have this thing all torn down to do the oil pump, timing chain, and fix power steering leak, but you do not have to tear yours down to do this, and I'll show you how. You'll have to pardon my mess here. This is the front engine cover or timing cover on the Land Rover. You can reach this with this in the vehicle. So you're gonna notice that right here is the sensor for your dummy light. You've got another port right here. This is just a metric threaded plug. You've got this one right here, and this is the one I'm gonna be using because I think the clearance is a little better. This one's getting real close to that idler pulley. This one may be easier for you. Honestly, I don't know if this one will work or not. I mean, that kind of seems like it's part of the relief, but for sure this one is confirmed to work. So if you're looking at it this way, it's just below and to the left of your oil dummy light sensor. This right here is the switch I'm using. It's the Glowshift color series, whatever. Definitely not the cheapest, but what I liked about it is it uses an electronic sensor. I don't have to run that tube thing for the pressure. The other cool part is it comes with plugs already done. This one you just have to supply power, ground, illumination, I think. Here's the gauge. It's tinted, obviously different colors, and has all the plugs on the back to make it easy. It does come with a very simple mounting bracket, but this thing was like $6 and it's made by Glowshift. It's meant for this gauge. I thought it was worth it for the mounting. So you'll need a 22mm or a 7/8 to remove this plug from the cover that I showed you. So this thing has M20 by 1.5 threads, so you have two choices. You can do like I did, which is gonna be drill and tap the plug. I already drilled it, but I haven't tapped it yet. I'll show you that. And there's already a dimple on the bottom to center your drill bit, so it's super easy. I think it's a R drill bit, which is one of those weird sizes, but what you do is drill that and tap it for 1/8 inch NPT for this particular gauge. I'm sure other gauges have different sizes. The other option is you could get a, what did I say, M20 by 1.5 to 1/8 NPT adapter. They do sell them on eBay. I just thought I'd save a couple bucks and drill it and tap it myself. So just for reference, this is where that cover goes, and that plug lives right down in here, and it's out in the open, and you can get to it from below your Land Rover and possibly even from over here. That upper one I was showing you, I felt like it was getting real close to this bracket and stuff, so that's why I chose the lower one. So I already got this drilled. I'm gonna get it tapped, and then we'll move on to wiring and routing of the wires and installing the gauge in the Land Rover. Okay guys, down in the video description, or maybe even in the first comment that I'll pin, I'll leave links to this gauge and all the little parts and pieces that I use to get this thing going. So again, this is the tap I'm using. It's 1/8 inch NPT, which is pipe thread. And if you didn't know, pipe thread has a taper to it. It's not straight threads like a bolt. So the farther you run this down there, the bigger these threads end up being. And since I don't know exactly how tight this is going to be or how deep I need to tap it, I'm probably going to go another couple turns and test fit this, and I would like it if I could get at least half these threads in there. What you don't want is to run this all the way through and then have this thread all the way until it bottoms out and not be tight. So that's why it's important with these NPT taps to just go a little ways, check it, go more if you have to, etc. This has some kind of a thread sealer on it. It'll probably work, but this is my jam right here. I use this in place of your typical thread tape all the time because this stuff mostly just peels off and then little chunks end up in your oil. And I'd rather just use just a dab of this. I'll put it right on top of this sealant, and then I know it's not gonna leak. You really don't want to cake this stuff on there because it's just gonna end up coming out into your oil passage and either clogging your filter or going all the way through the system back to your sump, clogging the little oil pickup strainer. So with this stuff, RTV, Teflon tape, all that kind of stuff, less is more, trust me. That's literally all you need. In fact, I won't even use all that. This is the same size hex as that one, which a 7/8 or 22mm will work. So make sure your port's good and cleaned out, and we're gonna use that same thread sealant on this. I'm waiting on a timing set before I put mine back together, so I'm just putting it in right here. This is aluminum, so you do not want to kill this, but you do want to get it good and snug. I'd say we're good. If this video is helping you guys out, hit that little thumbs up down there for me. It ain't gonna hit you back, I promise. So as for mounting location, I really had thought about putting it here. This spot would work. The issue that I'm having, but this is really textured, and that pod that came with it comes with like double stick tape, and I really feel like that's not gonna stick very well. You could also get one of those generic A-pillar gauge pods. You'd probably lose your tweeter. I really don't like those. So the wire from the sensor on the oil pressure center needs to come in here. The best place to do that is right there. There's a firewall grommet where that red and black wire come out. That's accessory the previous owner installed, but you can just poke a hole in the little rubber booty, make sure you don't poke a wire, and you can feed your wire through that to get into here. From there, inside of here is your fuse panel, and I'll go over where we're gonna tap power from and stuff, but you can get that main wire and snake it up through here somehow to get up there, or even along the side of this trim to get up to your dash. Since mine already has some wires through it, what I'm gonna do is just poke through and follow those wires very carefully. Slight pressure and twisting, and it goes right through. Come around to this side, down below your brake booster. So there it is. So you can see my piece of screwdriver sticking through there, and that's where our harness is going through. So the harness here is 10 feet long, so you're gonna need every bit of it you can get. The big end is for the sensor, the little end is for the gauge. So obviously the little end is going to be easier to push through. So what we're going to do is try to follow right through where I pushed that screwdriver through. It's going to be really hard for me to film this though, but I hope you get the idea. Another little hack you can do is take some electrical tape and tape it to that screwdriver and then very carefully pull it through. I'm going to see if I can get it without having to do that first. I kind of just followed the same little slit that the last person made in the rubber boot. I was able to push just the head of that connector through. So I'm going to pull it through and then get it up underneath of this. I'm afraid that 10-foot harness isn't going to be enough if I try to jump to that side. So if you look through there, right through there, you can kind of see light. There's this plastic cover back here. So we're going to run that wire right up through here. And I'm gonna see what other route I have to snake it up through here, maybe into under this, and then come out right there. And I pulled enough through to where I should be able to get it right there. I'm gonna check the other side and see how close or how far I am away from being able to reach where this needs to go. This is just gonna be a very rough guesstimation, but it looks like it's gonna make it. I got a little bit to spare, and it just has to go right down below that hose right there. So it's pretty easy to just fish up the side of here, and then I must be missing a screw because mine pulls up, and you can just route it up behind all these wires. I'm just gonna make a little notch in the bottom of this so that the wire doesn't get squished, and then I'll just make sure that this is kind of out of the way down here. I'll probably zip tie it up. So we're good on this end. I should be able to just clip the bottom corners of that off, and then that should set right over it. Not exactly as pretty as I wanted, but nobody's ever gonna see it because the gauge will be right there. Actually, I'm gonna have to make that bigger for the second harness for the power. Dirt. So the first plug fit through the hole in the bottom of this thing. However, the power plug's a little bit too wide. Just make sure that you stuff these wires down through and then route them. So to mount this down, there is 2 screw holes in this base. So what I'm gonna do is mark it. Found a couple little screws with those chunky threads that might just bite into this dash material. I really don't wanna drill down through here with my vent being there. I'm thinking if I just poke a hole into it and then just thread these in, they'll just bite. The only problem is they're Torx, but I think they'll work. I'm gonna go ahead and use that sticky pad and these screws, and hopefully it'll hold down. Being real careful with this because it's basically going into foam, and I don't want to strip it and then have them not hold at all. Okay, so these studs on the back are if you're using the metal bracket. We're not, so there's the 2 plugs. Can't get them wrong, 3-pin, 4-pin. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these plugged in before I try to screw this down, and then I'll pull whatever slack through. So here's my power wires, and they're just long enough to do some taps at the fuse box. So you don't have to use this bezel. It's to keep the sunlight off of it. I'm going to. And then there's this little rubber thing that goes on there, and that's kind of what squeezes it in here. Otherwise it would just fall out. Isn't this just the cutest little screwdriver ever? Yeah, don't mind my blood. I poked my finger. Super handy for getting to weird reach screws like that one. So the directions recommend using these little fuse taps, which I had a bunch on hand already because they're only a couple bucks for like a 5-pack on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description. Basically, you find whichever fuse matches what they're wanting on this and pull it out, and you put the original fuse in here, and then you put a new fuse in here so that it kind of creates 2 circuits out of one. So your original circuit will still be fused, and then the new circuit will be fused there. But it's kind of handy because then you don't really have to splice wires. You can just pop these in there and you're good to go. Yeah, so here's the wiring. 12-volt constant, 12-volt ignition switched, 12-volt headlight switched, and vehicle ground. I kind of skipped over the boring wiring part, but I did the hard work for you. Those are the fuses. If you're using a Land Rover Discovery 2, these are the fuses that work. So F2, that's your gas door. It's a constant power. F15 is the cigarette lighter. That one's on ignition switched. F33 is the parking lights, and that seems to work. When I turn this on, it dims. So one tip, the manual for this gauge said to not tap into anything with a dimmer. So like if you find your courtesy light circuit and there's that little dimmer wheel, don't tap into that, because if you dim that wheel at all, it'll lower the voltage. And since the lights in that gauge are LED, it'll just basically cause them to flicker or just be on or off, like, because most LEDs aren't dimmable. So keep that in mind when you're picking your fuses if you want to use different ones than what I used. So like I said, I used fuse taps, which makes it super easy, and I just tapped them in. I'm not done with this wiring. I'm going to tie it up out of the way. And that's the other thing. I didn't see a good ground in here, so I ran, yeah, I know I used yellow because it's what I had, but I ran the wire up under there. It's going to that bolt right there that holds the hood latch on, or the bonnet latch. But yeah, that's where I chose to do a ground, just because it's up out of the way, it's hidden. I am gonna label these to which fuse they each go to. That way, if I ever have to pull them to check another fuse, I know where they all go back. So I'm gonna label them F2, F33, and F15. They're gonna be tidied up. The only bad part about these fuse taps, as you can see, is it mounts the other fuses up or down, so it blocks the one under it. So I tried to pick as close to the edge of the fuse box as I could. That's the constant power, that one's the headlight, and that one's the switch. Anyway, turn the key on. It's gonna just peg to 100 because I don't have the sensor hooked up. But when you turn the headlights on, you can see it dims. So it's all working. I just got to do the rest of the wiring and put my engine back together. So I got it all in a wire loom. I just happen to have this 7-foot thing of it, and it's almost perfect. And it runs just right up until the little grommet where it goes through. So I'm gonna try to route this the best I can. I've got my AC sitting up there in the way and stuff. It comes around here to right here. I stopped there, and I actually threw this cover up here and just plugged the sensor in because I want to go see if that gauge sits at 0 when we turn the key on. Nice. That's as far as I can go till my new cam gear gets in. I decided to replace this while I had it apart. For my normal subscribers that are normally here for Jeep stuff, if you made it this far, thanks for sticking in there. If you're new here, I'll be doing a few more Land Rover videos. I already recorded one about fixing the power steering on this thing, but I hope this helped you guys out. Hit that little thumbs up for me, and I'll see you next time.